Well, my first suggestion is don't start with your resume. I know, like, that's going to be a shocker to a lot of people, but before anyone does a job search, they really need to do some mind work or head work to understand what they want to do, what they like to do, what they're good at, and what the market is telling them that is of value. The interview part, it's very important to me because having been a recruiter, I have been on the other side of that desk. I've done thousands of interviews, and it always saddened me, the people that should have gotten the job but didn't. And it usually wasn't that they weren't qualified, but they just did not present themselves well. Well, I think growth can be in many ways. I mean, traditionally, we have thought of growth as I'm getting promoted, right? And organizations are a lot flatter than they used to be, less hierarchical. So that can be tough if that is your only way of looking at growth. So I have always thought of growth as what do I learn? Because your job can grow. And so what else am I doing? What am I learning? How am I keeping up to date with what's going on in my industry or my profession?
Okay, great. Well, thanks so much for joining me today. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Define Your Purpose. And joining me today from Sarasota, Florida, is Shelly Piedmont. She's a career coach for mid-career leaders. Thanks for taking the time to speak with me today, Shelly. I'm curious about how you got started, and before you were a career coach and you worked in a lot of HR. Was that kind of your specialty out of school? Is that what you got into right away?
Oh no. I I when I first finished school, my bachelor's degree, I went to work for the Department of Labor. I worked in the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Most people know that because that's where the um, unemployment numbers come from. Um, but also the consumer price index, that's things like that. So I worked on what was called the International Price Index, and I was not a good fit for that type of role. Even though that was what my degree was in, I really didn't like it. So I decided to go back to school and I got my master's degree in hotel administration. And I decided I wanted to be in the hospitality industry. And I was starting to pursue that. And my role got eliminated. So I didn't know quite what to do. But what ended up happening is I was contacted to go into a recruiter role. And I thought, well, why not? Didn't have anything else lined up. So I did that. And I found that I really enjoyed it. And that led me to do recruiting for a very long time. And then I decided I was getting a little bored with it. And bored meaning it was very repetitive. I was filling the same positions over and over again. And I wanted to have a little bit more variety. And so I told people that I really wanted to go into general HR. I went ahead and got my certification, and due to a company reorg, They actually listened to me and they put me in this new HR role. I loved it. And that really was starting the path for me to continue to move up in HR. And so that's what I did up until the time that I decided to leave the corporate world and move into being a career coach and having my own, business.
Okay. Okay. Awesome. So what kind of prompted that leaving the corporate world then? You just kind of had enough at that point of corporate restructuring.
No, it was a situation where kind of a lot of things happened at the same time. My employer was acquired, and so there was a lot of change going on. And so part of that was I really had to evaluate what I wanted to do. Obviously, this was not something I had asked for, and there was going to be a lot of changes. And so I had to decide, what I was willing to do, what I wasn't willing to do. And it also coincided on the personal side that my husband's father, my father-in-law, he needed some additional help. And so these two situations kind of culminated in, you know what? It might be time for me to do something different. And it also would involve moving to a different location. So that's essentially what happened.
Kind of one of those times when you feel like everything happens for a reason, maybe.
Yeah, actually, at the time I was not particularly happy that I had to make a change because I really was enjoying my job. I was thriving in it. It was a great organization. The work I was doing was interesting. So I didn't really think that I would ever have to make a change, but sometimes the world works in mysterious ways and it forces us to rethink what we want to do. And, now where I sit, I'm so happy that it happened because I'm doing something just delights me. It's different than what I probably would have done had the situation not been there, but I enjoy it so much. So I feel, sometimes the world is telling us that we need to do something else.
Right? Yeah. Yeah. I hear that. So what's your favorite thing now about what you're doing that you say you really love? Is it helping people who have a lot of trouble in their job situation, or is it helping achievers who really have high goals?
Um, it, it is a mix. So I really enjoy the working with the clients and being able to help them reach their goals. And everybody's goal is different. But, they come to me because they are frustrated, things that, are in their professional life aren't working for them. So, for many people, it is that they've been successful in their career, but they're not enjoying it. And they think about, working until they retire, and the thought of doing what they're doing and not enjoying it is really hard on them. And so they want to explore what else they possibly could do that would bring them joy, where they would thrive. So it's, you know, really a great thing that I can help them kind of think through what that could be. Okay. So that's part of it. But I have some clients who know exactly what they want to do, but they just don't know how to get to it. For many, they may not have been in a job search for it's been a long time, so they don't know what to do in a modern job search. Or it could be they've been trying with no success. And so that's frustrating for them, and they want to know what they're doing wrong and what they should be doing. And so going to an expert who can help them so that they can achieve their goals. So I get a lot of pleasure when my clients are very successful, they're in roles that they love, and I was there to support them and help.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Right on. That's great. I think more change is happening faster and faster nowadays. It seems like people are changing careers more in their life than ever before. I read a statistic: the average college grad now changes careers like 5 times or something. So it's maybe kind of getting near your career path there that you've been working on, huh?
Yeah, I would never have thought, honestly, that I would have so many career changes. And aside from the one that was sort of forced on me by, the job being eliminated, most of them I decided on my own that it was important for me in that time in my life and what I was interested at that time to make the change. And I I don't think of myself as being particularly brave, but I know that I did some things that a lot of people wish they could do, but don't feel they can for many reasons. And I always go back to had I not done those changes or tried them, how less fulfilling my career would have been.
Yeah, that's a great point. Sometimes I also have felt in the past that the corporate structure it makes it difficult to grow and continually grow as a person. Like I think it's really important for people to continue to grow throughout their career. Um, so, do you think that's an important part, maybe, or having kind of a outside perspective? Um, do you think it's important now for people to seek growth in their whatever position they're in?
Well, I think growth can be in many ways. I mean, traditionally, we have thought of growth as I'm getting promoted, right? And organizations are a lot flatter than they used to be, less hierarchical. So that can be tough if that is your only way of looking at growth. So I have always thought of growth as what do I learn? Because your job can grow. And so, what else am I doing? What am I learning? How am I keeping up to date with what's going on in my industry or my profession? So I always felt like I could continually grow by learning new things, experiencing new things, asking for different projects that I could then, expand my skills. Um, so I think, growth, you can look at it in many different ways. And I just chose to look at it in just the how I personally am growing uh, and my value increasing for obviously the employer, but for me as well.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it can be hard to differentiate yourself now. No matter, I feel like any career you're in, it can be hard to differentiate yourself and stand out. What are maybe some takeaways or pointers that you've been able to help people do that with in the past?
So, one of the things I focus on a lot with my career changers is what are your innate strengths? Everybody has them, and we do them so much better than everybody else around us that they're just wowed. How, obvious question is, how do you do that? I can't do that. Well, that usually is an indication you have a strength. So the question is always acknowledging what you have or what you can do really well, and how can you lean into that in whatever profession you are in so that you have a value or an advantage over others. So I always give the example is um, we deal a lot with customer service people. And, um, you know, we've got an issue, we call an 800 number, or, we're dealing on chat, whatever it might be. And they're not all the same. They're People are very different about how they approach the customer service. And so it's not just one way that you can be successful. There's many different ways to be successful, but you have to understand how what you offer and how you can lean into that. So some people are really good on the thinking side. They can come up with ideas, concepts, things that other people just like, Where'd you even come up with, that?" Okay? That has value. There are other people that are really good executors. You give them something, they will get it done. Okay? So that's a value too. And some people are just really good at that, to the amazement of many of their coworkers. So, it's just knowing what works for you, what you are really good at, and that's and making sure that you're leaning into that, making sure that it's a value. Yeah, that will make you unique and get you noticed.
Yeah, yeah, right on. I think that in the business world, especially, you want to play towards your strengths. When you're in school, they try to tell you to be a well-rounded kid and all this stuff, and it just doesn't really translate into business. I think.
Well, I think sometimes we concentrate too much on where we are not as good. Our skills are not as good. And there's probably some truth that you need a minimal level of proficiency. But, when I think about some of the things like I studied, and you studied, in high school, like we never used them. Never, never. So, would it have been better use of time to actually concentrate on some of the stuff that we would use and that really we could excel in? So, yeah, I know that, in many jobs you have to have base level competency, but what sets you apart then is those other things that you really do really well, and people will notice those.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. Um, so I I wonder also if someone were just trying to get their resume back together and it had been ages and since they had done any kind of looking or anything, what do you recommend they do to try to sort of get their act together and start looking again?
Well, my first suggestion is don't start with your resume. I know, like, that's gonna be a shocker to a lot of people, but before anyone does a job search, they really need to do some mind work or head work, to understand what they want to do, what they like to do, what they're good at, and what the market is telling them that is of value. So that takes some research, it takes talking to people, um, but when you have that information, then you can write a really great resume because now you're doing it from a strategy perspective. What do I want to do, and what do the employers that I want to work with who hire the people like me, what do they want? What are they looking for? So you write the resume not based on what you want to say, you write it based on what your reader needs to hear, and there's a distinction to that. And those that are successful job seekers, they write the resume for their audience. That way, when that resume gets read, you are answering the question of how are you qualified for the role? Because to get to the interview, you have to show that you are one of the best qualified people for the role. And using this strategy, you have a better chance of doing that. So that's my suggestion.
Okay, yeah, that's great. That makes sense. So you must have by now accumulated a lot of experience with the whole imposter syndrome sort of thing that everybody talks about, feeling at one point or another. How do you help people with that? And do you have tips about that?
Yeah, it's very common, imposter syndrome. I think, most people feel it at least sometimes in their career. And the thing about it is, especially with the clients that I have, because they're generally successful, is to remind them, boy, you did all these things, right? You you had these challenges and you met the challenges. And, you know, lots of times you went into a project or a role and what did you do? You just learned. You learned how to do it. You used your knowledge, your skills, or your experience to tackle the problems. And, it wasn't always, I'm sure, smooth sailing. There must have been times that, you had setbacks, but you overcame them to get where you are. So, what is it about this new situation that you don't think you can't do the same? And so when you kind of unpack it that way, then people are feeling, okay, yeah, I have done this before. And no, maybe I haven't had this experience, but I've got the tools to be able to sort it out. And even if something challenges me, I'm smart enough, I can figure it out, or I can get resources to help me. And oftentimes when you do that and you go through sort of that exercise, then you can kind of go, oh yeah, yeah. That's it's more in my head than the reality.
Right? Yeah, yeah, totally. I agree. So, do you help your clients on the emotional side as well? It sounds like.
Y- I think a coach does that because careers are very personal. And so there's strategy around it, but there's also just kind of how people feel about their situation. So when people are frustrated, I would rather they talk to me about their frustrations than, venting maybe on social media, that sort of thing, which is probably not terribly helpful. But I always feel like I'm a safe space for them. And so sometimes it is feel the feelings you're feeling. They are real to you. And let's talk about that. How can we move you forward so maybe you're not feeling as frustrated, right? Or you're not feeling as angry because generally those feelings um, inhibit your progress, right? You have to work against them to progress. So it's better if we start addressing them so that you you don't get bogged down by them and can make the progress you want.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. So, and is that kind of, I know you help people with interview kind of jitters too. Is that sort of along the same lines of advice that you give someone, that sort of thing?
The interview part, I it's very important to me because having been a recruiter, I have been on the other side of that desk. I've done thousands of interviews. And it always saddened me the people that should have gotten the job but didn't. And it usually wasn't that they weren't qualified, but they just did not present themselves well. They could not explain what they did or could do for the employer. And so that's why I think interview preparation is so important um, because it's usually something no one has had any formal training in. And so they do their best, but oftentimes they have no idea where they may be sabotaging themselves. And so, working with a coach like myself, we give honest feedback. So, I will tell the person I'm working with what I am seeing, and that is based on my years of conducting interviews. I'll tell them where I think they're doing well to keep up and things that, are not working for them. And what we do is then we talk about why it's not working. And oftentimes, I find that the person I'm practicing with, they know it's not working, but they just don't know why. And so we can talk about it. We can talk about how to change, alter that approach and practice that. And then what tends to happen is the people that I work with, their confidence soars because they feel like they're telling their story in a way that they're very comfortable with, and that it better reflects what they can do. And so when they know that they can do that, they go into those interviews much more confident. And the thing about confidence is it is contagious. So if the person who's being interviewed is confident, then the interviewer has more confidence in them. And that's an important part of the decision making of whether to move that person forward or even to give them an offer. Is the employer confident that that person will solve their problems?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So, how does someone move forward with you? I mean, do you have different rates of assistance that you have different packages maybe that you help people with, or is it kind of just a 12-week program? A lot of coaches have just 12 weeks and it's done. How does it work?
So, Carl, I am a big believer that everybody is a little bit different and have different needs. So, um, what I do is I listen to what the person is telling me about their goals and their struggles. And then what I will usually do is based on that, I will have a package that I customize for them based on what I think they need that would be of value to them. So, um, career clarity is one of those things. The people who are stuck and don't know what to do next, I can work with them on that. There are some people who just don't know how to approach a job search, so I can do job search strategy with them so that based on their particular situation, what would probably work best for them. For some, they just need someone to look over their resume because they're just unsure about it. So I do resume strategy sessions. I help people understand LinkedIn because uh, generally people know that they need to have a profile that is pretty robust so people can find them, but it, LinkedIn sometimes feels a little intimidating. And so what I do is I try to make it easy based on the person's goals. And then, of course, we talked about interview preparation as well. And then I have also worked with clients on salary negotiation. So they want to maximize what they can get. And so we talk about, kind of what is their goals in that and what strategies they can use.
Nice. Awesome. That's great. That's a lot of flexibility to offer like that. It's awesome. So, um, I wonder what if you had to do everything over um, and get back to where you are. What would you do differently? Do you think?
Oh, I don't know. You know what? I don't I don't really think about that question, honestly, because had I not done some of the things that I've done, I probably wouldn't be here. Um, yeah, and as that first job I had out of school, it wasn't a good fit. But there were so many positives out of that job. I met my husband there. So, yeah, that was a really good positive, and I have lifelong friends that I first met there who were coworkers of mine. Known them for years and years now. So, there's always something positive you can get out of any situation if you wanna look at it that way. So, I don't know that I would do anything differently, in my career, and, I'm a career coach now. Right today, I'm thinking that's what I'm gonna always be, but who knows? Maybe something else will come up, and I will say, "Yep, another pivot, let's do something else." But, that's kind of the way that I kind of live my life.
Right. Yeah, that's cool. So do you believe in retirement? Because people talk about that, and I think it is kind of a construct, and I don't really think that um, I'm ever going to you know, retire anymore. So what do you think about retirement? Are you going to retire one day and go play golf or something?
Well, that's so funny you mentioned that because I had lunch with somebody who is retired and plays golf and is quite happy. So, um, so I think it's individualized, really. Um, and so it's just what are the person's goals? What do they want to do when they're not in a formal job? Um, so I um, I do a lot of volunteer work, and many of the people I volunteer with are technically retired, but they are doing a lot of volunteer hours and for the organizations that they are passionate about. So while that's not technically a job, they're certainly busy. So I think retirement should be what you want it to be. I don't think it's retirement from life. It may be retirement from a 9 to 5 job, but again, even with that, many people decide to do a side job or a part-time job. So I think, uh, I would rather we probably should have another name for it because it implies that people sit all day at home and watch TV. And while certainly some people might be doing that, a lot of people are not. So just I think you make it what works for you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's good advice. It can be it can be tough to figure out what you really want. Sometimes I think it's important to always spend that time to kind of step back. I think on a kind of a regular basis and think about what you really want. Right? I mean, you must.
Well, I think it also it is in line. I work with people who are like mid-career, but I think the same looking at your career and what you want applies at the end of your career as well, which is okay, this might be wrapping up or you might feel like you're done with this, but what is that next step going to be for you? And plan that out.
Awesome. So if people want to get in touch with you, is your website the best channel?
Yeah, they can go to my website. It's mycareergps.com. So that has a lot of information about what I do. You can also find me. I hang out a lot on LinkedIn. So you find me under Shelly Piedmont there. And then I do videos, and so I put them up on YouTube and my channels. At my career GPS. So find me any of those places.
Nice. Awesome. Great. Well, thanks so much for taking the time to speak with me today and share all your great experience, Shelley. Really appreciate it.
Oh, it was fun, Carl. I appreciate you asking the questions and giving me some time to actually tell you my thoughts.
Good. Cool. Very cool. I'd love to catch up again sometime soon. Have a great week and stay in touch.
Okay, sounds wonderful. Same to you.
Thanks, Shelley. Bye bye.